This young boy was also the victim of a knife attack at school. Ben Goddard was sports mad, and at the age of 12 was signed for Norwich City's boys team. His footballing career looked promising. He was a number 9 with an eye for goal. Panorama has successfully challenged a legal ruling which up until now has prevented Ben's story from being told. Now 16, he lives in a small village in Suffolk where the attack took place. It is little different from the community where Luke Walmsley grew up. After a series of minor arguments with another boy, Ben was attacked and stabbed in the school toilet.
He just stand there and then grabbed me by the collar and pulled me in to onto the knife in his fist. And it just felt like as if he punched me. I just took a step back and I just caught a glimpse of something around this area. And I just looked down and there's like a knife in my stomach and I just slid out.
What was the boy who attacked you doing?
He was just standing to the left of me, just standing there watching.
Didn't say anything?
Well, when he pulled me onto the knife, he said he was going to effing kill me. And I thought he like hit me and I just thought that was it sort of thing. And I just saw the knife in my stomach and just thought I had to get help straight away. I remember just going blank at one point and apparently I passed away in the ambulance and they brought me back round and I just remember getting into hospital and then they said they had to operate straight away.
So the shock of what had happened and the fear sort of subsided as you just felt yourself getting weaker on the way to the hospital?
Yeah. The worst I thought could happen was obviously I could die or...
Were you conscious of thinking about that at
Yeah.
the time?
It was just like running through my mind and I was just trying to stay awake because they kept shouting at me, trying to keep me awake.
While the paramedics fought to keep Ben alive on the way to the hospital, his mum got a frantic phone call from his father.
Panic sort of come into me. It was a thought that, oh God, he's been larking around at school or something and there's either a compass or a pencil or something like that. We got up to the hospital and Ben's dad was there to meet me. And I don't know, but I suppose by the look on his face and that was more just to say, you know, that weren't just a pencil or something like that. But it weren't until the surgeon come down and told us, you know, how big the knife was and what Ben needed doing, that, you know, we realised it was a large kitchen knife.
When I went in, they had to do an operation straight away to stop all the bleeding and try and get me back to normal. And I lost like twice the amount in my blood which should have been in my body. And they had the knife went through my liver, one of my main heart arteries, and my pancreas and my stomach. My wound is like really small. That is the knife wound. Like all my operations go all the way down there, right across there.
How big was this knife?
And it has a 6.5-inch kitchen knife.
In November of last year, the face of this 14-year-old boy was seen in newspapers and television reports across the country. His name was Luke Walmsley, and he lived in the village of North Somercotes in Lincolnshire. He was a bright, popular lad, but Luke was being bullied at school. On that November morning, he went to school as normal. On the way from a class, he was stabbed just once by a fellow pupil.
I dropped him off at the school bus and said I would be there to pick him up. And then got to work and the phone call came, you know, that Luke had been stabbed. And get to school as quickly as I could because it was serious.
I thought, well, he don't do cookery. And, you know, that's the only place I could think that there was a knife. And you just, as you're driving along, you're trying to think of all the ifs and ands of what it might be, and then I roll up, and obviously, like Jane said, there's police cars, ambulances, there's people running across the lawn at the front, and all I can hear and remember is the sound of the helicopter.
We were told that the air ambulance was going to rush him to Grimsby Hospital, and he was in cardiac arrest, and he had been for quite a while. And when I said, you know, don't tell me he's going to die, he said, I can't say that. And then we were rushed then to Grimsby Hospital because there wasn't room in the helicopter. And they did let us see him while they were working on him. But it was just so obvious to us, wasn't it? You know, he was dead. They were just keeping him alive. And a few minutes after that, you know, the surgeon, Mr. Tilson, came in and said, you know, I'm afraid I couldn't help him. He said he was stabbed straight through the heart.
Some days later, the Walmsleys received some of Luke's coursework from school.
What kind of boy was he then? A very self-confident one? Looking at the pictures
Very
you've got.
confident, yeah. We were given these papers when the police searched the house and went through Luke's papers that Luke had written only a few weeks before his death for an English project. And it was me and my family. And I'm just so pleased that they found them, because the words in it were, you know, my mum goes to work and she likes meeting people. My mum's great, you know, and I love my mum and all things like that. He thought his dad was mad because he works really hard, and you know, my dad's crackers and things like that, didn't he? And as Luke's mum and dad, you then look at that written word and think, you know, I haven't done such a bad job.
The boy who murdered Luke Walmsley was 15 years old. Alan Pennell was found guilty and given a life sentence. This young girl was on a night out in the city centre. She was with a group of her friends, girls that she had known for years. She and one of her friends began to argue. There followed an attack so ferocious that it left Kirsty Nesbitt permanently scarred. Her attacker was just 14 years old.
There was a fight, and then that was it. And then she walked away, and then I stayed where I was, like, with people and that. And then she came back, and then we were, like, just about to fight again, and then she must have slashed me and ran across the road.
When did you realise that she had slashed you?
Well, everybody was screaming, like, if you slashed her, slap my face. I said, that'll be a scratch, and then I looked, and there was a blood in that. And then there was an ambulance here already.
Did you realise how bad the wound
When I got into the ambulance, they said I would need plastic surgery and about 14 stitches.
How many stitches did you need in the end?
93.
93.
I think the shock of seeing a 14-year-old girl permanently disfigured in a way which will have a lasting impact on her and her family in terms of employment, future relationships. That picture was splashed across the front page of the local evening paper. I know it caused a shock to a lot of people, and it could have been so easily avoided. That was a group of friends. It was an argument, and the other girl brought out a craft knife and just slashed her on the face. I can't begin to understand why she did that, and I wonder if she actually thought of the consequences. I would suggest she didn't, but it's that willingness to just make such a cavalier use of a weapon which ultimately can kill.
I think there's a misconception out there that it's safe to stab people with small knives in certain parts of the body, and that's not the case. You can cause serious injury and indeed death with only a short blade if it's applied to the right parts of the body.
But there is that belief among some teenagers that it's kind of all right.
Very much so. If you stab someone in the thigh or stab someone in the buttock, they're not going to die, but that is often not the case.
Tony Bleetzman took me through some of the typical knife wounds that he and his staff have to treat. All of them awful to look at, some of them simply too horrifying to show on television.
This is a slashing type of wound, which we see in about 2/3 of knife attacks.
Right.
And here, the victim has Almost certainly. Brought his arms up to protect his face.
Gosh. Yeah,
as
sort of
the-
to cover their face like that.
And the blade has been brought across at speed and has made contact with the back of his hand. The tendons that extend the fingers, that bring the fingers up,
Yeah.
have been severed, they've been divided.
Does that leave permanent damage?
That would need fairly accurate and meticulous surgical repair to restore function in that hand, and it may never be perfect.
I mean, is it... Oh, God. What's happened here? That is horrific.
It's a ghastly injury, but very fortunately the wound didn't go beyond muscle. It didn't divide any major nerves or blood vessels, and the surgical teams were able to reconstruct that quite nicely, but clearly a disfiguring and potentially a life-threatening injury. For whatever reason, gunshot victims tend to get more coverage, or gun crime gets far more coverage. It's more dramatic. But we must remember that gun crime in this country is still relatively quite rare. It doesn't happen as nearly as often as we see these awful knife attacks.